It's genuinely, I want to actually genuinely give my heartfelt condolences to any young person who falls for this crap, because you're going to be so miserable for the rest of your life. If you chop off your genitals and take a whole bunch of chemicals as a teenager, you are going to be miserable for the rest of your life.
Yes.
You're never going to be the person you want to be. You're never going to be accepted as that person. You're never going to feel happy inside. If you fall for this, I genuinely feel sorry for you. I find it very interesting that the only surgery we call affirming is gender surgery. Imagine a girl woke up and said, I was born in the wrong body because my tits are small. I'm a big-titted woman, but I was born in the wrong body. I need tit affirming care. I need to affirm my true body shape, because otherwise I have a mental health problem. No, it's plastic. It looks good, perhaps, whatever. But we would never say she was born in the wrong body and we had to affirm her genuine body experience.
Her triple Ds.
Yeah, her triple Ds had to be affirmed. It's garbage. You're not affirming anything. And also, I think it's kind of interesting. They say that trans people commit suicide at a higher rate. That's sad. Nobody should kill themselves. I would hate for anybody to kill themselves. They say that's because they're picked on for being trans. I don't know why anyone's ever had the argument that perhaps they have a mental instability before this trans stuff, and that's why they're more prone to suicide in the first place.
Seems like an obvious explanation.
Seems like an obvious explanation. I don't think it's normal for anybody to want to mutilate themselves. I think if someone were to come to me and say, I really want to cut my hand off, I would think they had a mental illness. Why? Don't like it. Maybe you don't like it. I don't like my hand. I don't want it. I would think that's very concerning. So I really, truly feel sorry for any young people who fall for this. I don't blame them. I think it's a massive psyop. And I think if you fall for it, you're going to be miserable forever. And one more point I'll make on this whole thing I found very interesting. I'm a professional fighter, so I spent a lot of time in Thailand when I was fighting. Kickboxing is big over there. And I've always thought, no one's ever mentioned that Thailand has a bunch of ladyboys, right? But if you say to a ladyboy, are you a man or a woman? She goes, I'm a ladyboy. What's that? I'm a man, but I'm a ladyboy. They don't see themselves as women in the real sense of I am female. Right. They don't want to compete against women in sports. They don't want to pretend they can have kids. They don't talk about having periods. They're like, oh, I'm a ladyboy. It's like kind of like a in-between, it's got its own thing.
India has the same.
Yeah, it's fine. Nobody over there is genuinely arguing that they are actually female. Only in America are we doing that. And that's what's the craziest thing of all. Even if you truly, truly believe you need to change gender, and you truly believe it's the right path for you, and you believe you're not being psyoped, and you believe you're going to be happy, and you believe you need to mutilate yourself, that's all fine. But then to come along with the hubris and arrogance to tell me that I have to pretend you're something you're not,
yes,
biologically.
That's right.
That's absolutely not really arrogant. You can't tell me what I have to call you, right? I'm allowed to come to my own conclusions and opinions. And the whole point of being a human is that we've gone through life long enough to identify patterns. Imagine humans didn't identify patterns. One person went and got ate by the lion, you watch it happen, then you go for a turn. Like, no, you work out over time. Don't go near the lion, right? If I look at a person who's 6'4", muscularly built, right, with a big jaw and a beard, my brain and my life experience tells me that's quite often a man. That's
very often it is.
Very often. That's the conclusion I've come to. To come along and say, no, because I've decided to do X, Y, Z, you have to ignore all of the patterns you've identified throughout your entire life and everything you believe to be true. You have to throw away all the science in your entire worldview and everything about how you view the world. You have to eject that from your brain and call me what I want to be called is extremely arrogant. And if I went through the world and said everyone had to call me King Andrew, they'd tell me, shut up. Why? If they can get called whatever they want, I should be able to get called whatever I want. I want to be King Andrew, #1 savior of Earth, climate change activist. That's what I want to be. And if anybody calls me anything else, they're a bigot. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go down that path. I'm going to make sure that my title is good. Lord of all beasts of the land and fishes in the sea. The most honorable man who's ever lived. The fastest human alive. Who cares? It doesn't matter that I can't run fastest. It doesn't matter, Tucker. I'm the fastest human alive. You must affirm my belief. I'm the fastest man alive. Greatest man in show business. Sorry, Tucker. Best political commentator there's ever been. Let's just go down this path of insanity. Why not? Walk around with stickers on our head. It'd be great. It'd be fun. The scariest thing about all this stuff is that the world is still polarized to a degree because there's certain places in the world which are too close to baseline reality for survival, for any of this garbage to fly. You think you can go to Tajikistan where people are trying to eat and talk to them about gender and all this garbage? They'll be like, listen, you're a man, this needs doing, shut up, right? There's no time for any of that. So as the Western world is self-destructing in real time, there are places in the world where none of this crap is happening. So who's gonna own the world in 100, 200 years? Like, it's still competitive to a degree, it's still bipolar. There's two sides to the world. I think that when men are men and women are women and we stop arguing about dumb shit, that society overall is more competitive. I don't know how America's gonna maintain its influence over the entire planet when it's doing all this garbage. How long can this possibly last?
Not long.
Not long. It's like the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome, everything became decadent, endless sex and orgies. No one had enough faith in the state to join the army anymore. And people talk about barbarians destroying Rome. Rome was destroyed from the inside. That's what happens. And we're witnessing it in real time. And we have all these problems on Earth, and then they want to spend millions and millions of dollars on an investigation to prove that I'm a human trafficker for TikTok. It's clown world. Nothing even makes sense anymore.
This is a video from a recent Pride March in New York. I'm interested in your view of it.
So I have a few points on this. The first point is that it is an unfortunate reality, and I'm not going to be called a bigot. I'm going to talk about the reality that the homosexual community cannot reproduce in and of themselves. So for them to have a community into the future, they do need your children. That's how they think. For there to be a homosexual community in 100 years from now, they need straight people's kids, because only straight people have children. So they're telling the truth. That's the first thing. They mean what they say. The second thing is, I think a lot of this is an attention grab by them. I think they are slightly disappointed in how tolerant many people actually are. I have no problem with gay people, I don't care. I'm gay, cool. I want to get married, fine. I'm gonna wave my dick in your kid's face. Wait a second.
Yeah.
They push it to a point where we have to react. And then when we react, they say we're bigoted. Children are innocent. And destruction of innocence is one of the most disgusting things on the face of the planet. It's terrible if a child is killed in a war. It's terrible if a child's mind is warped by any propaganda mechanism. They're innocent. What I don't understand is why, imagine heterosexual men walked around naked saying we're coming for the children.
Someone gets shot.
Absolutely. So why is it when you
for good reason.
Completely. So as soon as there's this sexual orientation, they're completely protected. And I think that the whole point of having children as a whole is to instill them with your worldview. I know if I have children, I want them to be like me. We just talked about my last name and how I want them to honor me into post-death. Then I want them to be a representation of me, which means they should believe in my values and my creeds. Why is a group of people in New York walking around telling me what they're gonna teach my kids and what my kids should believe? They're not your kids, they're my kids.
Right.
And that's what's so scary, because children are impressionable and children are raised by the state and the internet, effectively, which is why they want me off the internet. But they'll let a lot of people stay on the internet that say a lot about a lot of things. I'll argue that if I was transgender, the American embassy would have told Romania they were bigoted and removed me pretty quickly. I would genuinely argue that point. They would say, no, what you're doing is abusive to the LGBT community. He must be removed from jail.
Of course, immediately.
Immediately, but because I'm straight and heterosexual, it doesn't matter. We're the class that suffers the biggest bigotry that possibly exists in the Western world today. I would actually argue that point. But they're saying this to be deliberately provocative. They're deliberately trying to upset people. They want to upset you so that when you talk against it, they can call you names and call you a bigot. And also they mean what they say. And it's truly scary. I'm obviously a Muslim, I'm Islamic. What most people don't understand about a lot of the Islamic world is that a lot of these things are outlawed, right? But people say, so gay people can't go there. If you go to Dubai, you will see gay people. If a guy wants to be gay and do whatever he wants to do with a full-grown man in his own house, I don't care. And you can tell, you might have a waiter who's gay, whatever, etc. The only reason it's outlawed is not to stop a full-grown man meeting a full-grown man and doing what he decides to do. It's outlawed to prevent it bleeding into society and affecting the culture where the children are affected. That's why it's outlawed. And I'm not saying it should be outlawed in America, but what I'm saying is if you're not going to protect the innocence of children from any ideology, and if the ideology is deliberately targeting children because children are more impressionable and more capable of believing in things which simply aren't true, perhaps a man looking like a woman or vice versa, then that is a dangerous ideology that should be very closely examined.
Well, if you're not going to protect children, or if you're going to encourage women to fight your wars, why have a society in the first place?
Well, this is another
Isn't
thing.
the whole point of society to protect women and
You
children?
know what's really interesting? I argued this point once. They were talking about how the West is a patriarchy and it's so terrible to be a woman in the West. And I'm like, well, where's better to be a woman then? If it's not the West, please tell me. You should pick another country besides America where you'd rather be a woman. It's garbage to begin with. But you're saying, oh, America's a patriarchy and Americans are all misogynistic. And men are so bad and women have been oppressed since the beginning of time. It's always been a patriarchy. If that's true, why don't women fight our wars? Think about it. We can get the women of our country and the women of another country and let them go die in a ditch. And us men can just sit around being patriarchs. Why do we have to go die? Why do we have to go get our legs blown off? No, because we're a patriarchy. Women can go suffer. Or do the women get to stay at home and we go suffer? How is it a patriarchy, right? So that's garbage to begin with. But I think, genuinely to go back to that point, any ideology which is waking up and saying, our worldview is so extreme, the only way we can truly ensure it exists into the future is to find the most susceptible people on the planet to program and attack their minds, children. I think that's a destructive ideology that should be very closely looked at. And it doesn't matter if it's LGBTQ or anything else. I think if you sit children down and pump propaganda into their brain, and that's the only way you can get what you want, then there's probably something wrong with your ideas because you're afraid to challenge them with a grown adult. You don't want a fair fight. You understand? They don't want a fair fight. They want to sit with a child who has no idea what he's talking about and tell him that men are women and women are men, and vice versa, and just completely confuse the poor child because they don't want a fair fight against a rational adult. And that's scary.
It doesn't seem a huge improvement over, say, ISIS to me.
Absolutely. That's how do you convince somebody to blow themselves up? Well, you find a young man, teenage boy, and you program his mind. Exactly. And it's exactly the same thing. They don't try and convince an older man to blow himself up because he's going to sit there and go, well, why don't you blow yourself up? And then there's an argument. You go find a young, susceptible person, right? And that's what's so scary about all of it. And it's also kind of funny that like this whole LGBTQ thing is also linked to the patriarchy, also linked to all this other garbage and all these other false narratives and false ideas. And it's these people who are attacking me saying I'm dangerous for women because I'm a misogynist. You're dangerous for women for pretending men are women. You're more dangerous for women than I am. I'm saying a man's a man's, a woman's a woman. You're saying that if I put a wig on, I could go punch women in the face in the boxing ring. Who's dangerous for women? It's insanity. And again, they have no virtue at all. They just weaponize garbage and attack you with it. But I do think that children have to at least be the bottom line for society. That's the future. And if you have children at home, you're raising them. And if you struggle to feed them, the government doesn't care. They are yours and they're your problem and your responsibility. And you deal with all of the stress and all the worry of them being out late at night and all the responsibility of taking care of them. And you went through hell for them to exist. You don't owe their minds to anybody else. You don't owe it. So there has to be a point where you stand up and say, no, I raised this child.
It's my child.
That's my child. It's not yours. Absolutely.
What do you make of Julian Assange?
I think that it's crazy. It's the number one way to shut up the BBC, that's for sure. To mention him. Say, oh, you're a journalist. You care about journalism, do you? You care about a fair and independent story. Why is Assange in Belmarsh? Very interesting.
What do they say?
They don't answer. They try and change subject. They always do. I did it. I stole it from the Azerbaijani president. He started it.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's great.
Do you know him?
I don't know him, but I've seen enough of his interviews to like him.
Me too.
Yeah, I like him. And this is what I'm saying about the world. There's so many places in the world where they still live very firmly in the real world. All of this garbage is just the result of the very simple, easy lives that we have. Inside the movie The Matrix, which I recommend you watch, the agents say, we tried to create a utopia for the human mind so that your mind is in a utopian state and your body can just be used. But the human mind rejects utopia. We created the world in 1999 at the pinnacle of human civilization before machines took over because the human mind needs struggle and it needs problems, otherwise it rejects it.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like there's a whole bunch of people trying to just find problems and find struggle in their lives because they don't have enough motivation to do something that's genuinely difficult, like, help people. But they can't live in this state of complete vegetation.
That's
so
right.
then they wake up and say, oh, I'm oppressed, my pronouns. How much energy must it take to go through life trying to correct every person you interact with to call you Z? Think of the calories burnt. I can't think of a bigger waste of time. Think of the calories burnt. Every Starbucks employee, it's actually Z, correct? You are a moron, and you are just wasting so much energy. You could put that towards something beneficial. You could volunteer. You could go to the gym. There's so much more you could do with instead of walking around and talking about Z. You sound like a dumbass. But they're just finding struggle because they don't have any actual important struggle in their lives. And that's why it only exists in the decadent West.
Do you think the coming famine will change that?
Absolutely. I would argue that when the famine comes, I think all these feminists will look for a strong man of resource, who is stoic, who has a good network, who's capable and important and respected. It's amazing how quickly feminism disappears. In fact, there's a podcast I did called Fresh and Fit. And I did this podcast in Miami, and I was arguing about gender roles with 7 girls. And during it, they were telling me that they can do anything a man can do, all the usual things, and they don't care, they don't need a man, all this garbage. And some crazy fan knocked on the door for me, and he had a gun. He knocked on the door. You should have seen the women, how quickly they became feminists when I had to go to that door. They all completely changed. Go. Oh, the feminism's out the window. There's no feminists on the Titanic. There's no feminisms in a famine. There's no feminists at war. Where's the feminists? Go to war, right? I remember when we did that very well-planned, very thorough evacuation of Afghanistan, and all the schools that we opened for women got shut down by the Taliban. And I was having this conversation with someone, and I was saying, okay, well, you're an Afghan man, right? You've been hired by the Afghan Defense Force, and America's now left, and you have a meager wage, and America's left, and the Taliban are coming, and you're standing outside of the school with your AK, and they're coming with whatever they've got. And you're looking at the school going, do I really want girls to go to school that bad? Not really. Just put it down, you walk off. And this girl's like, yeah, but it's really important. And I'm like, yeah, it is very important. I agree. Women should have education and right the education. Completely agree. But you're also saying here that men should die for it, which is fine. I'm not saying that shouldn't be the case, but I'm saying that you should give men the respect they deserve for dying for your education. Because it's not the women who are going to defend that female school, it's the men. So if you're going to shit on men all day long and say we ain't worth anything until a war comes, and then you want us to go die? That's interesting. When the famine comes, the closer reality gets towards baseline survival, the closer we become towards our gender roles, because it's the only way we can be competitive. If you took 10 men and 10 women and stranded them on a desert island, the men would be men and the women would be women. If they didn't, they would die. That's the bottom line. And I think that if you look at history, since the dawn of time, men were masculine, and also men, by and large, were generally ruling the society, not in an oppressive way, but in a protective way. And I think that makes society most competitive. And my argument for that is that if you name any society since the dawn of human time, men were protecting women, providing for women, and basically in charge of the society. And these are societies that never met. There can't be an idea that spread. The Ming dynasty and the Aztecs, they're pretty far away. But that's how society was most effective. And when feminists argue with me and say, we need a society run by women, I say, well, that's never ever happened. And if it has happened, they got destroyed so quickly they never had a history. You can't even name one. So it's a brand new idea, which I'm not saying is a bad idea. I'm saying if it's a brand new idea, you can't tell me it's going to be better because it's never been tried, ever. So we're going to see. But what happens if it doesn't work with the most powerful nation on earth? Right? So we're feminizing men and women have more and more control and more power, which is fantastic. I'm saying this is untested. Who knows where any of this is leading? And our competitors, America's competitors, are still very firm in their gender roles. So it's certainly an interesting period of history you're about to enter. It's very interesting.